Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our Database Cloud Services Office Hours. We really appreciate you joining us today. We have a really interesting topic around security, and security is always important when it comes to protecting our data and protecting our businesses as well. So today we're going to talk about the Autonomous Database and DataSafe. And DataSafe was introduced at Oracle World last year. And it's really a very cool service that I think you're going to find it's going to be really helpful within your jobs to help work with your auditors, find what kind of information needs to be protected in your database, what kinds of roles and privileges that have been assigned to other users that you forgot about. So I'm really excited to have on our host. Oh, by the way, my name's Tammy Bednar. I'm a Senior Director of Product Management of Database Cloud Services. And I'm really excited to have with us today is Russ Lowenthal. He's a Senior Director of Product Management for DataSafe. And I know Russ is on the road and talking to lots of customers about DataSafe. But Russ, you've been in security for a really long time, right?
Been at Oracle in security for over 20 years, yes.
There you go. So Russ is like an expert when it comes to security. Now, unfortunately, Keith can't join us today, but Keith Laker, he's a Senior Principal Product Manager for the Autonomous Database. And I just wanted to put his name out there because Keith is always providing us great content around Autonomous Database. And just to let you guys know about Keith, he may join us later to answer some questions. So, Russ, why don't we go ahead and get started and talk about security and the Autonomous Database and DataSafe as well.
Sure thing. Thanks, Tammy. So, guys, DataSafe is a production service. It's been available for you since September. I don't think I'm going to be talking about anything. Well, actually, towards the very end, I'll mention something that we're starting to work on that's not there yet. And whenever any of us at Oracle do that, we plan a lot of things. Sometimes those things actually come to fruition. Sometimes they don't. If you're thinking about buying something and you think, well, I want to buy it because this cool new feature may be coming, don't do that. Always count on what's actually there. But DataSafe, been out there for a while now. It's very very stable, very usable as is, and the new stuff that I'm talking about, you'll see towards the end of this.
Thanks, Russ.
If you're
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Also, if you have any questions, please post those in Q&A. And I'll either answer them or Russ and I will talk about them as we go through the presentation. I'm so sorry, Russ.
Not a problem.
So anyway, Q&A at the bottom. Just click on that and ask any questions. Okay, go ahead. Now we can talk about our security cloud.
And Tammy, if I've missed a question when it comes in, please feel free to interrupt me.
Thank you.
One of the great things about DataSafe, and you're going to see this, is DataSafe is actually really easy. So Tammy, being very generous, gave me the entire session for this, but I could cover DataSafe in 10 minutes if I had to really hurry. Now, you wouldn't see much, but I could cover it very, very quickly. So, obviously, Oracle is in the business of offering databases, both on-premises and in the cloud. And whenever we talk about cloud, you can pretty much guess that whoever we're talking to about it is going to have a couple of questions. They're going to wonder things like, is the cloud really secure or not? And I think kind of the consensus in the industry is that while the cloud offers an increased threat surface, in general, any of the reputable cloud providers tend to be more secure because we have staffs dedicated to security. We have very well-tested blueprints. So most people would say that the cloud is more secure than an on-premises data center. And then, the next question is, all right, I'm going to put my data up in your cloud. Is my data safe there? And we do a lot here at Oracle to make your data safe in our cloud. Kind of our starting premises, and you've seen this if you've done anything with our cloud, is that by default, we lock everything down, and you have to relax it in order to let anyone in. And then we give you a lot of tools to keep your data safe in the cloud. We're going to cover those again as we go on. And then finally, does it meet my compliance requirements? And if you're in a regulated industry, you may have requirements to report on who's seen data, or you may need to know you know, what types of sensitive data you have. Maybe you have healthcare information or financial information or personal data. But these are all questions that almost every customer that puts anything in the Oracle Cloud or any other cloud is going to have. And they're legitimate questions because the reality is the bad guys do come after the database. If I'm a data thief and I want to go steal data to maybe sell it or make some use of it, then, you know, there's only so much I get from hacking into a laptop and dumping the contents of a laptop. But if I can get into a database and dump the contents of a database, I'm going to get a lot of data, and I'm going to probably get it in a form that is easy to search, easy to monetize. You know, databases are like the candy of the data thief's world. They're definitely going to go after them. And there's a lot of ways that we see people try to break into databases. By far the most common is to attack the database administrators or the system administrators and to try and penetrate a database using administrator credentials. I'd say the vast majority of attacks that we see look at this as an attack vector. If I can't get in as the admin of the database or the admin of the server the database is running on, then I'll try and get in as just a regular user of the database. If I can't do that, then I might try attacking the application. A lot of times applications, especially older applications, will have SQL injection vulnerabilities, and that's a great way to break into a database. If I can't get in that way, I might be able to just sit on your network and sniff what's going on over the network and attack from the network standpoint. And so that's another very popular way to steal data. I can try and exploit a vulnerability in the database. This isn't such an issue with autonomous database. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But on-premises databases especially, it tends to take a while to patch, you know, once we release patches for those to be applied. And during that time, those vulnerabilities that we patch, those are just open for the bad guys to come after. So database exploits are a way. If I can bypass the database and just get onto the server or steal a backup or an export of the database, that's a great way to get in. And of course, attacking non-production systems. If you're copying production to your dev and test environments, then if I can break into those, I can steal the data just like I could in production. So these are all ways that an attacker might try to get into the database. Now, in the autonomous database, we give you a lot of capabilities to help you secure that database. And a lot of stuff is just done for you. For example, encryption is everywhere. So someone who gets onto your, you know, manages to get to your storage system, which they shouldn't be able to do that in our data centers, but if they do manage to do that, your data is encrypted. Your database is encrypted. If they manage to get out to an object store or something and look at your backup, well, that's encrypted too. If they're sniffing the network, they're not going to be able to see that because that's encrypted. So we encrypt everything by default, and we don't allow you to not encrypt because we don't want to accept that risk. We also provide you a lot of points of control around access. So access control list in your VCNs, private endpoints to reduce your exposure to the public internet, network security groups to control what's going in or out of those, database vault, especially database vault operations control to block administrator access to data. That's all there. Database is self-patching. One of the biggest, you know, pains that you have for on-premises database just simply doesn't exist in the autonomous database. And we have default privilege restrictions and command restrictions that keep you from doing things you shouldn't do in the autonomous database. You know, I could go on for quite a while. There's auditing controls, there's labels, there's just a lot of stuff that goes on in the autonomous database that helps protect you. But there's only so much that we can do in the autonomous database.
So Russ, on the current slide, I just want to say that I think there's a lot of areas that we all forget about, right? And I think this is a great slide that helps us identify and think about all the different ways. You've already pointed out in the previous slide about how data can be compromised, but I think this is a great slide that kind of shows us that we have great capabilities already built in and to help you, because there are a lot of points where data can be compromised.
Absolutely. Absolutely the case. Now, again, if you look at how that data typically happens, the majority of the paths to data are already taken care of for you by Autonomous Database. We don't have unencrypted data. We're not missing patches. Administrators don't have access to data. Network isolation is good. You know, we take care of malware and viruses. But there's only so far we can go. And security at some point in any cloud service becomes a shared responsibility. There's things that we can do for you as your cloud provider, and there are things that you have to do for yourself. Now, for the things you have to do for yourself, I'm talking about data for the most part. As you put data into your Autonomous Database, we don't look at that data. We don't know what data you're putting in. In fact, we have a lot of controls to keep us from looking at your data, and you don't want us looking at your data. So if you decide to fill your Autonomous Database up with credit card numbers or with taxpayer IDs or personal data about your customers or your employees, we don't know that, and so we don't know what kind of controls you should have on that data. We also don't really know much about the users that you add to your database. As you allow your users, your DBAs, your developers, your people to access that database that you put in the cloud and let them begin manipulating data and putting data in and taking data out, we have to assume that the users that you've created are doing the things you want them to do and that they have the privileges you want them to have. If you've decided to grant everybody on your, in the company PDB admin, well, you've made that choice. We have to assume that's what you really wanted to do. We audit by default in the database, in the Autonomous Database, and we audit the most common high-value, high-risk operations. But because we don't know what your data is, we don't know whether there are individual data objects, tables that need to be audited, PL SQL that needs to be audited. So you may wind up having to adjust your auditing. There's just a lot of things that we can't do for you because we're so busy concentrating on the stuff on the left and isolating ourselves from your data and from your users that we can't introspect into what you're doing with those users. Now, we didn't want to just say, we got the stuff on the left, you've got the stuff on the right. So, and feel free to go do the stuff on the right any way you want to. So what we've done is we've given you DataSafe. And DataSafe is our attempt to give you the tools you need to do your part of that shared responsibility model. It handles things like security and user assessment, sensitive data discovery and masking, and database audit, and we'll be adding more and more capabilities to it as DataSafe gets more and more mature. So what DataSafe does for you is it gives you a unified console, and you're going to see that in just a few minutes, that lets you mitigate your risk, know where your sensitive data is, know what your users are, what your users are doing. And the great thing about it is, as I hope you're going to see, it's actually very easy to use. It doesn't require deep expertise. This is something that pretty much anyone who knows a little bit about databases and maybe a little bit about security can use and get real value from. And we think it's important enough that it's included with your Autonomous Database at no additional cost. So if you're using Autonomous Database and you haven't already configured DataSafe, you might want to, as we're going through, bring up your Autonomous Database console and follow along with me, because in a few seconds, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a brand new Autonomous Database and I am going to register it with DataSafe. And we're going to go all the way through from beginning to end, how to begin using the Autonomous Database. All right. So with that, let's stop talking and looking at slides and start actually doing stuff. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start with actually what I've done first, and I apologize, I'd already done this, is I've gone into my OCI console, I've gone to DataSafe. Give it just a second, and I have enabled DataSafe. So this was a one-time operation to enable DataSafe. Never have to do this again, all right? The next thing I would do is I would go, because autonomous databases are pretty much automated for everything, is I would simply go to the autonomous database that I want to register with DataSafe. And I would scroll down and I would see DataSafe, I'm not registered. Let's go ahead and register. Now I'm just curious, as I'm doing this, is there anybody who is doing it with me? Are there any of you that are going to follow along and actually do this with me? Because if you are, I'll wait and we can do Q&A as we go along.
You can raise your hand if you want to indicate that you're doing this along with Russ. Okay, maybe not, Russ. So
I don't see anybody. All right. This is so easy. You don't even have to do it now. You can do it whenever you're ready, but I'm just going to register, confirm that I want to register, and that's it. In the background, I'm going out and I am registering with DataSafe. Once it's registered, I'm going to get a link to go to my DataSafe Service Console. And because it takes a minute or so to register, I went through this morning and I registered this database. So once it's done registering, it'll look like this, and you can just click View Console. When you click View Console, it'll look like, well, you won't have a bunch of stuff here. My DataSafe has a lot of databases and a lot going on. Your graphs will be kind of boring until stuff starts happening. But you'll see the functions on the left, the library of stuff on the top, and everything's ready to go. Okay? Now, after you've registered, the first thing you need to do is grant DataSafe the required permissions. So registering creates a target. And let's see here. Here is one of my targets. So if I go in, I can see these are the targets that I have registered, and here's what they look like. I don't have to configure any of this stuff. It's just done for me. But I can go through and say, well, I would like to know what I need to do next. I'll click on Help over here. And I can see I'm allowed to do autonomous database, both data warehousing and transaction processing. I can do bare metal. I can do virtual machines. But if I look over on the left, I'll see the kind of the information about those systems. And I'll see that to register an autonomous database, I have to grant roles in the DataSafe service. So let's go ahead and grant those roles. And to do that, I'm going to execute dstargetutil.grant role and give it the role name. The roles that I have to work with are these 5 roles: assessment, audit collection, data discovery, masking, and audit settings. Now let's just see if my system has timed out on me here. Okay. So I should have shown you this first. This user did not exist before I registered. He should exist now. Let's see how my registration is going.
So Russ, when autonomous database is provisioned, those roles aren't part of the database. When you register with the DataSafe, then they're created. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
So I can see, this is the one I just did, ADW ERP. I can see that the registration has completed. So if I go back over here and I rerun my query, I managed to catch it in time. This user was just created seconds ago.
Great. So that's part of our security on our databases. We're only creating users or roles that are really required to run the business. So this is great that we don't even create these users until you need it with DataSafe. Exactly.
Now, when we created this user, we gave him very low privileges. This user, and hopefully you could, I tried to adjust the font size up a little bit, but this user only has the ability to run a security assessment and to look at audit within the database. It can't change audit settings, it can't look at data, it can't do anything but some of the basics. If we go back to our roles If I want to make full use of data safe, I have to grant data discovery, data masking, and audit setting. So I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to do that. And because I'm a terrible typist, I had everything ready for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and grant those 3 additional roles.
If you have any questions, please type those into Q&A, and Russ and we can review those as Russ goes through his demo as well.
Yeah. And right now, my data safe user, which is DS$admin, has all of the roles that they need. Everything is there. I can now begin working with data safe. So having done that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to settings. Data safe is a free service. It costs you nothing. And by default, we try to keep it that way. So in data safe, if you create more than 1 million audit records per month, which most people shouldn't do, then we will stop collecting those records, because after 1 million, we begin to charge. If that's the behavior you want, all you have to do is make sure that you haven't checked the paid usage flag and that you didn't say to keep collecting for all targets.
So Russ, you're talking about the cost being free. Unfortunately, DataSafe is not available for the free tier databases, correct?
That is correct. So DataSafe is for customers who are actually consuming credits, paying for their databases. And I apologize to all of you who are on the free tier. Our cost to run DataSafe in the background behind every DataSafe is a 4 OCPU minimum autonomous database. That's what our repository is, plus a compute instance to run the application. Every customer has their own separate infrastructure to run DataSafe. Wolfgang asked, will the SQL commands that I just issued be part of the slides? What will be part of the slides is the link to where I got those roles. Is that okay, Wolfgang?
I told him
I'll have the link in the slides that we publish.
Yeah, we can either add them and the link as well. So that'd be great. Thank you for asking for that.
Okay. The other thing that I want to do up here in settings is I probably have a policy that determines how long I'm supposed to keep audit data for. And I want to make sure that the policy in DataSafe, the retention policy, matches my corporate policy or my organizational policy for how long I keep data. So again, to get here, what I did is I went to the DataSafe console, I went to settings, I made sure that I'm either paying or not paying, depending on how I want. Our default should be to not pay, and we only pay when we need to, and get that done. Once that's set, once I've set my paid usage flag and validated my audit retention settings, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to the home console, go up to targets, and I'm going to create an audit trail. An audit trail just tells DataSafe where to collect audit data from. So I'll select my database, and the database that I added in is right here. And I'm going to grab from the unified audit trail. And I can say, do I want to automatically purge data when I collect it? This is a good idea to do because it removes the data out of your autonomous database and keeps your storage costs down. So we'll do that. We'll purge that data, and we'll register our audit trail. A few seconds later, we see that our audit trail is created. And shortly after that, we'll see this begin to start. And that should happen automatically. So let's just re-click over here on Audit Trails. And it takes, 30, 40 seconds to go. While we're waiting, we can see now it's collecting. So just exactly like it should be. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go again to the Home Console, to Security Assessment, and we're going to say that we want to collect or report on our security assessment, our security status from the database. We'll do the same thing for user assessment. We'll say that we want to assess the database we just added, and we'll do the same thing for activity auditing. We'll say that we want to collect, this one requires one extra mouse click, our audit policies for the database. Now, at this point, if you go back to your Home Console, once those tasks is completed, you'll start to see your graphs begin to fill in. You're now actually using DataSafe. And so you can go through and say, well, I'd like to see what I actually have for the security assessment. So I can open up security assessment. Now, I'm going to warn you in advance. Autonomous databases are boring as heck when it comes to security assessment, because we don't let you really shoot yourself in the foot too much. There's only so many things you can do to weaken security in an autonomous database. So you'll notice I have no high risk, only 3 medium risk, and some very low. This is a low number of findings. I'll click into it just so you can see what they're going to be, but there's just not much there. If you're looking at your databases, maybe your xCloud service or your VM databases, you'll see more here. But what you should see for an autonomous database is very, very low risk stuff. The medium risk is I've got accounts that don't automatically lock if they're inactive more than 30 days. I've got accounts that can try unlimited numbers of failed logins. And I've got accounts that can have an unlimited number of concurrent sessions. Now, these are risks, and we classify them as medium because in other databases, they'd be a little bit higher risk. But remember, in order to connect to your autonomous database, you have to have the autonomous database wallet. So that already has shrunk the amount of people that can be attacking your autonomous database quite a bit. We give you the capability to look at lower risk items. So lower risk things might be things, oh, these are low risk, hang on, sorry. What were my medium risk? Oh, we have some auditing things that we're missing. And in this particular database, I created a sample schema that had no encryption, okay? So we can do medium risk, low risk. There's some advisory stuff, things you might want to turn on. So in this particular database, I've got Database Vault enabled at the operations control level, but I haven't set up any individual Database Vault policies. Now, this may be perfectly fine. You may not need them. But if you haven't looked at how Database Vault can help you with security, it can do a lot of things around controlling what's going on inside your database. It is included with your autonomous database at no additional cost. And we're just advising you, you could be using this and you're not. I'm not using database privilege analysis. We talked about granting privileges to the DataSafe user, but your other users have privileges too. Privilege analysis will tell you if they have privileges that they're not using. And if that's the case, they might want to remove those privileges. So advisory findings are things like this, features you could be using that you're not using. You'll want to evaluate these. We can't tell you if they're good or bad. This is just what we found. So for example, in this database, we have the SH schema that comes with the sample data warehouse, so that's normal. But if it was not an autonomous database, you might not want that. We've got some privilege grants here. These are for things like Golden Gate admin and mostly for the admin user. You can determine whether these are things you want to continue to allow or are these things that you want to revoke.
Hey, Russ, I see that as you go through some of these that there's some labels CIS and STIG too. Should we mention that a lot of these are based on these compliance frameworks?
Oh, absolutely. So we didn't just come up with these checks, out of our pockets. The things that we look for in security assessment are based on the Center for Information or Internet Security's benchmarks, CIS benchmarks. They're based on the U.S. Defense Information Systems Agency Secure Technical Implementation Guides, and they're based on GDPR requirements, which are roughly outlined in NIST 800-171. So we didn't just make up these rules. We check a lot of things because there's frameworks that say we should check them. And if it applies to one of those frameworks, we'll tell you which one it applies to. Thank you, Tammy.
Oh yeah, no, that's perfect, because I know that's really important for a lot of the businesses having to comply to these frameworks. So this is great, and we'll continue to add more frameworks, I'm sure, as we as the future grows with more compliance requirements.
Oh, absolutely. We're looking right now. There's a new framework that was recently released called the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, CMMC. And we're looking at that one for adding fairly quickly. Anyone who's supplying to U.S. or NATO defense agencies probably cares about CMMC. Anyone who's selling to Department of Energy probably cares about CMMC. So if your company is doing business with those defense industries or energy industries, you probably care about that. But yes, we're always adding new stuff in. Very good stuff. So this is security assessment. The main purpose of security assessment is to make sure you know where settings or configurations have been done that introduce risk, and you can choose to mitigate that risk or choose to accept that risk. If we go back home, the next thing you can do with DataSafe, and I'm just going down the aisle here, is you can do user assessments. And I did a user assessment just a few seconds ago, so we can go into Russ ADW here. And we can see that for the users I have a few users that we think are critical. Now, when we judge the risk for a user, we judge it based on how much damage that user could do if their account was compromised. Because you might remember when I talked about how bad guys attack the database, the number one way that they attack the database is they try to get in as a database administrator. These three users that you see as critical users are all highly privileged users. So when I look at one of these users, and I'm just going to take a high rather than well, I'll take one critical and then I'll go down to high. If I go to admin, I can see that admin is highly privileged, mostly because admin has the DBA role. There we go. So admin has that PDB DBA role, which gives admin so many privileges. If I go to a little bit lower privileged user, I happen to have one called Russ, since this is my database, I can see that Russ has a privilege that is generally considered sensitive because Russ has Audit Viewer. Now, I'm not Audit Admin, but I have Audit Viewer. Other than that, I have the Connect role. I have a PWD role, which has no privileges at all. I was playing around with proxy administration or proxy authentication for this, and I have the Select Catalog role. So I'm fairly minimally privileged, but because I have Audit Viewer, then DataSafe rates me as sensitive. I can see for these users, again, what privileges they have, and if I scroll over, I can see what those users have actually done in the database. Let's pick someone who's maybe actually connected. And so I can see that this user altered a user and created somebody called Russ. And if I want, I can drill in to get more information on what they've done. And I can see the actual SQL statement they issued, when they issued it, where they connected from, all of that type of information. Okay, so security assessment looked at configuration. User assessment looks at the users of the database, tries to assign a risk level from them, and lets you check their privileges and their activity. From there, we go to data discovery. Now, I haven't put any data in these databases yet, so I'm not going to do data discovery on them. I'm going to do it on one of my HR development instances, because there's some actual data in there. And what sensitive data discovery does for me is it lets me scan my database, and I'm going to create a new one. I'm going to go ahead and look at sample data as I'm doing this. It lets me scan my database. Wrong compartment. Oh my goodness, where is that database? I think it's in there. Bother. Oh, darn it. Hang on a second. I apologize, folks. This is the database I want, but I need to figure out what compartment I'm in. Okay. That's how you know it's a live demo. And you are unlikely to have this, but because I have so many people using my tenancy, I've got a lot of different compartments out there. Doggone it. I'm only going to give it just another second here, and then I'm going to give up. And I'll go pick a different database. Fine. I'll pick mine. So we will do this one. It's going to be a little boring because it has no interesting data in it. So we'll create, we'll look at that. There's just nothing in there to look at. One more try. Swell, oh boy. Okay, here we go. This one I know is mine. I get to choose what schemas I want to scan for. I'm going to look at all of them, but there's no data in here, so it's not going to find much. I'll just show you what the process looks like, and then I've got a report that was already run for that other one, so I can show you more interesting stuff. When we look for data, we look for a lot of different types of data. So we'll look for social security numbers, UK national insurance numbers, social insurance numbers from Mexico, from Canada. We have several different types of identifiers we look for. We look for driver's license numbers, visa numbers, not credit card visa numbers, but passport visa numbers. We look for name information, biographical information, information on the family, extended personal information. We look for biometrics, IT type information, usernames and passwords, device data. We do look for credit card type information, so financial data, but we've got around 120 different types of information that we look for as we're scanning for data. I'm just going to go ahead and say that I want to look at all of these. So I'll select all the different types of sensitive data, and I'll continue. That will schedule a discovery job. Now, this discovery job is going to complete very quickly because there's no data in this database. It was just created this morning. But it'll configure very quickly and come back and give me the results from it. Let's look at what those results would be. So now we're going to go to one that actually has some interesting data in it. And here what we see is the type of information we found, the different areas. So we found job information, identifying information, IT info, financial info, and healthcare info, how much of it we found, how many different data types, and if we expand, we can see where is the extended information or where is the sensitive information. So for example, in my HCM schema, I've got something called Employee Extended Taxpayer ID. Taxpayer ID, credit, social security numbers, social insurance numbers, things like that. I've got first and last names, email addresses, phone numbers, street addresses. I've got a username in there, which generally is a IT type information. I've got payment account number, which is credit card information. This is the type of data that was located. It also tells me how many columns it found and how many rows for each of these. So that is data discovery. Data masking allows me to take that data and change it to remove the data, to change it to safe data. Let me go back here to data masking and try and get a look at what was done. So what I can see here is for data masking, I can change taxpayer ID and just go out and put in false social security numbers or made up social security numbers. I can randomize names, I can randomize phone numbers, but basically I replace sensitive data with non-sensitive data that looks good enough to do testing on. And that is data masking. The fifth thing that DataSafe does for us is auditing. And with auditing, I get to go through, and as you saw earlier, I can retrieve audit policies, but I can also set audit policies. So I can go through, and if I want to add in additional auditing, I can say, hey, I want to audit everything that the user Russ does, right? If I have custom policies, I can enable or disable those policies here. If I want to turn on the predefined Oracle audit policies, like maybe I want to do secure configuration, account management, and I'm going to be using Data Vault, so let's go ahead and do those. I also want to comply with the CIS benchmarks. They have things they say to audit for. I can go out and provision those audit policies so that that activity will be collected and available in the reports. I can also set up alerts. So if I want to be notified when there are failed logins or when there's changes to audit policies or database parameter changes, I can do that. Notice by default, we had all of these collected. Now I just changed a bunch of audit policies. So if I do go over to alerts, chances are pretty good that I'm going to have some alerts from Russ ADW. And it takes a few minutes to collect it, but these will be coming in and they'll show me all of the things that have been done that I should be taking a look at. Grants of privileges, changes to users, things like that. This data that I've shown you, the user data, the security configuration data, the audit data, this is all available in reports. So for example, if I want to take a look at activity that my DataSafe has monitored, I can go through and I can say, show me what's going on, and here's what Russ ADW has been doing. You know, Russ ADW came in, logged out. Russ ADW came in and changed some audit settings, because I just did that a second ago. I turned on the Aura Secure Config. And so all of this stuff is available in auditing. If I want to analyze it, I can go through. Yes?
Sorry. Hey, now that you're looking at all these audit records, a great question from Jeff came in about, are alerts integrated with these activities or the incident event management system that we have on OCI?
Oh, that is an excellent question. They are not currently integrated with the event system or with the OCI notification system. We're actually looking at two integrations that we want to do here in the near-term future. One of those is to provide a syslog output that will let you integrate DataSafe with something like a QRadar or a Splunk. The other is to notify to integrate with the OCI notification service, which lets you hit just about anything you want. So not today, but it is one of the things that we're doing fairly soon.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, great question. Anyway, I'm running low on time, but these are the things that DataSafe does for you again. Just remember 5 things: security assessment, user assessment, sensitive data discovery, masking, and activity auditing. Let's go back. That was our demonstration. I just want to give you a quick reminder, and these are going to be in the slides that you see. For registering DataSafe, the steps were register the database. And remember, I did that from the Autonomous Database Console. Grant the required roles, and here I've given you the link to where those roles are. Set your paid usage flag, so either determine, are you going to collect after 1 million records, stop collecting, or do you want to continue? Make sure your audit retention is set up the way you want it to be. Configure your audit trails, retrieve your audit policies, security assessment, user assessment. If you do those things, you're up and running. Once you've got that done, you're ready to use the 5 features of DataSafe. Easy as that. We've gone through and we've looked at each of those in this briefly, but we've looked at each one. And that's really it. DataSafe's whole point in life is to uncomplicate a little bit of what you have to do. If you've ever looked at the Oracle database maximum security architecture, you've probably seen something that looks similar to this. We have Audit Vault and Database Firewall. We have the Database Security Assessment Tool. We have data masking. You know, a lot of things work together. In Autonomous Database, that picture gets really, really simplified. Database Vault set up for you by default with Ops Control. Transparent Data Encryption is set up by default for you with TDE. DataSafe takes the place of data masking and subsetting, Database Security Assessment Tool, and the Audit Vault. And so these are the things that it does for you to kind of keep you going. All right. I somehow managed to put this next slide in twice. I'll remove that. But Tammy, I think we've got, what, about 10 minutes left for questions?
Yes, thank you, Russ. Next time on Database Cloud Service Hours, look for an exciting upcoming topic in April. Would love to hear from you on what kind of topics you would like to hear on Database Cloud Services Office Hours. Is there any specific topic? And we have done that we've heard from our customers, and we have provided some updated cloud services. There was a request about machine learning and Apex working together, and we did that one a few months ago. So I would love to hear from you on what kind of topics you would also be interested in hearing from us, whether it's about just the database capabilities or our database cloud service, any of our database cloud services. Would love to know what you think would be interesting. You can send those to me directly at tammy.bednar@oracle.com, or you can also ask a question in AskTOM platform. All these recordings can be found at asktom.oracle.com. We've had some great sessions and topics, just like Russ is doing today, to demonstrate how easy we're simplifying implementing security, even though we have so much security built in to our autonomous databases to protect your data, which is really valuable to the businesses today, and to make your life a lot easier working with auditors. So I think if we go to the next slide, we can open it up to Q&A. If you would like to ask a question live, please go ahead and raise your hand, and I will be happy to unmute you.
And Tammy, if you don't mind, I had one thing that I wanted to hit that I didn't talk about.
Sure.
It'll just take me a second.
No problem.
So I've shown you DataSafe. DataSafe obviously works with Autonomous Database, but we're constantly expanding what DataSafe does. And this is the part I'd meant to put in, and apologies, I must have put the wrong slide in there. I've got a pilot program that I'm running now for DataSafe on premises. If you are using Oracle Fast Connect, or if you have a VPN to OCI, a persistent network connection, and you are interested in trying DataSafe out for one of your on-premises databases, please send me an email and let me know. My email address is at the bottom of the screen here. And this is sort of a reach, but if you happen to be running an Oracle database in the Azure cloud, you may be aware that there is a partnership between Oracle and Microsoft for cloud resources. DataSafe also works with databases in Azure, and we are looking for a customer or two to help us smooth out rough edges and get everything working with the databases in Azure cloud. So if you're in either of these conditions and you're interested in working with us, we'd love to get you up and running on DataSafe on premises and in Azure.
Thank you, Russ. I think that's great, expanding this capability to all the Oracle databases, no matter where they're running.
That's
so
the idea.
Any questions? Just raise your hand and I can unmute you, or you're welcome to also, of course, type them in chat in the Q&A as well. Well, one more second while we're waiting to see if any additional questions come in. So Russ, do you have to do anything to set up your DataSafe instance in your tenancy?
If you are one of the tenancies that is allowed to use DataSafe, let me just go back to that. So if you're, the easiest way to get there is to just go to Targets and Help. And this is changing. We're constantly trying to improve this. But if you're on Autonomous Data Warehouse, Autonomous Transaction Processing, bare metal or virtual machine DB system, standard DBAS, no, it's just go in and enable it. If for some reason that's not available to you, as long as you are in a paid tenancy, we just can't afford to make it available for everyone who's doing this for free, but as long as you're in a paid tenancy, open up an SR and we'll get it fixed quickly.
Great. So if you have any of these database cloud services, you should just be able to go in, register, and start using DataSafe right away. No additional setup, hopefully.
Exactly.
Okay, fantastic. Good to know. I had always thought about that, so I thought I'd ask that question. Okay, so it looks like you've done too good a job, Russ, and covering the information around Autonomous Data Warehouse and DataSafe and security. So we want to thank you for joining us today. Russ, thank you so much for all this great information and a demo. I love live demos. I think those are fantastic. So this recording will be found on AskTOM within the next couple of days. We encourage you to subscribe to our Database Cloud Service Office Hours. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll talk to you next time on Database Cloud Services Office Hours. Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tammy. Thanks, everybody.